let's admit it, we live in a Carfax world these days, and Carfax carries a lot of weight in most consumers' buying decisions. However, because that's how the general population is, whenever a car has been in an accident, or at least an accident that's shown up on the Carfax, it substantially lowers the retail price of that vehicle. Which means for somebody who's seeking for a real opportunity and looking to make a great buy on a car, if you know what you're doing, you can still make a great choice buying a car that has an accident on the Carfax. But the most important thing is you need to know what you're doing. And so for us who've been in the car business our whole lives, we know what it is that we're looking for. And I'll show you exactly how we appraise a car that has an accident reported on the Carfax. In fact, we'll show you how to appraise a car whether or not it has an accident reported on the Carfax. The first thing that you have to do whenever you're appraising a car, it's the most important thing, is you need to feel this curve right here. As silly as it sounds, even though the car's not running, you think you need to go for a test drive or you need to do some background information on a car. The truth is, the most important thing is that you need to feel this arc right here with your fingers. The reason is that when a car has been to a body shop, if you've ever been to a body shop before, it's different than the car at the manufacturer. At the manufacturer, they haven't put a dashboard in yet, they haven't put an engine in yet, they haven't put a windshield in yet. So you can hit it with paint all over the place at the same time. So it'll have just as much paint on the top as it has around that arc. But at the body shop, it's completely different. They'll take paper and paper off everything that they don't want paint to get on, and so then they'll spray down. Because they spray down, the paint only makes it so far around this arc, so when you feel it, if it feels smooth, it might have still been in an accident, but if it feels rough, you know it has been in one because the paint can't physically make it around that arc. I'm gonna pop the hood on this particular car. Now this Mercedes has beautiful paint, and so Mercedes as a rule has beautiful paint, and it can be a little bit more conspicuous than other brands if it's been repainted before. Most people though who own a Mercedes-Benz, if they do get paint work done on their car, they're going to take it to a proper salon to get it done well, and so oftentimes it's difficult to see paint work on a Mercedes-Benz. But there's some things you just can't get around, and the first one are these screws right here. These screws are what holds the fender. This is the fender right here. These screws are what holds the fender to the chassis. The chassis is what's underneath the bodywork. And so I can look at these screws, and this particular concept is called a halo. A halo is a loss of paint in a crescent shape on the outside of the washer. The washer is the circular part right here. That means that this screw doesn't line up with the way that it lined up when the car was brand new. It's an absolute certainty that this fender has been off. Also, the edges of the screw itself have been worn out a little bit. The reason? Because somebody put a socket on there and wrenched that off to take that screw out. Only one reason you do that, because the car's been in an accident and you want to replace the fender. If I go up along this rail right here, I'll see the second screw also has been turned, the third screw has been turned, and the fourth screw has been turned. Now, it could be a fender bender, and it could be something worse. So I'm going to dig a little deeper, and I'm going to look at this screw right here. Now, most of the time, most manufacturers use kind of a rubberized paint underneath their hood, and so it has a particular kind of look and feel on this screw washer connection into the hood. And so it'll be sealed pretty well by the paint that's applied here, and that seal, if it's broken, can never be rectified. This seal is not broken, so whatever happened on this fender had nothing to do with this hood. So that's a great place to start. Now, as I go around, there's one screw that we love to look at in the car business, and it's the one that holds the top of the door to the body itself. And so even if you have a fabulous paint person, they can't access that screw with a paint gun. The only way you can paint it is with a paint brush, and you can only paint the side that's closest to you. So even if they really go to a lot of trouble to make the screws on the rail look proper, you'll never make that screw look proper, and that's a dead giveaway for a car that's been in a little bit more serious accident than just a fender bender. So we know for sure that the fender's been replaced on this car, but it looks like the door is the original door with no problems of any kind. Back doors are a little bit more challenging because you're looking for paint lines, and sometimes your eyes can deceive you looking at paint lines, and so people will use an actual paint gun. be careful with paint guns. Paint guns can also be deceptive as well. What a paint gun is going to measure is the difference in how thick the paint is from one part of the car to the next. Well, if the car's been completely repainted, then it won't measure any difference at all. And so you could buy a terrible car that will pass a paint gun inspection. So we go to the back. The same rules that apply to the front apply to the back. So I'm going to look at these same screws that hold the tailgate to the chassis, and these look completely original. So again, if I'm trying to discover if this car's a good deal or a bad car, it's starting to look like, if the price was right, this is a good deal. And then I'm going to continue to go around. The paint still looks nice, and so one of the dead giveaways are little tiny bumps in the paint, like a little blister. You have to look close to find them. They're called fish eyes. Anytime you see fish eyes, the reason that you see these fish eyes is because at the manufacturer, you've got guys in space suits and ionized chambers. There are no particulates of any kind, no dust, no hairs, no nothing getting into those paints at the manufacturer. However, at a body shop, it's just people painting cars, and that's the real world. And so a lot of debris will get on the paint. The paint gets painted over that debris, and you'll see these little teeny tiny imperfections in the paint called fish eyes. Again, dead giveaway for a car that's been repainted. So as we looked at that one main screw that holds the driver's door at the top location to the chassis, we look for it on this side as well. And again, everything looks just fine on this one. Coming around to the front, one thing you want to know about Mercedes-Benz in particular is that the car is designed around the windshield. Now, most cars don't put such weight on the windshield. With Mercedes, the actual architecture of the car is relying on a particular windshield to be in there. You always want to make sure that your Mercedes has Mercedes-Benz glass. And so what a lot of people will do to cheat that is they'll take the sticker off of their old windshield and try and reapply it to a $200 replacement windshield. Mercedes-Benz windshields are expensive, we know that, but they're very, very heavy, and they are important to the overall architecture of the car. That sticker is worth probably $1,500 to the value of the car. If you come to the front, if you remember how we looked at that front rail, we're going to look at the same thing on this rail right here, and you're going to see that that screw has been turned right there by a socket. In fact, this screw has been turned, this screw has been turned, and this screw looks horrible. And so, although they did a good job overall putting the fender on, the paint looks really nice, it's very consistent with the rest of the paint on the car, they did a pretty poor job covering their tracks and making sure that these screws looked factory fresh. So that's good for me reviewing the car because I know exactly what's been done on this car, but they could have done a little bit better. Had they done a little bit better, it would have made it more challenging for me to discover if this car had been in an accident or not. And so the easiest way to do it is to let your fingers do the talking, and you feel these curves and these creases, and you feel for the roughness of paint lines, which are there, but they're subtle, and they do require some experience to make sure that you know right from wrong. A perfectly good car might feel to the untrained eye like it's had some paint work on it just because it's grit that's accumulated over time, or you might be persuaded into thinking that a car is perfectly fine when it's been completely repainted and done so in a poor way. Why that would be significant is that if you plan on keeping this car for a long time, a poorly done paint application or paint application done over a lot of grit or debris or anything like that will cause the paint to start cracking over time, and it'll start peeling away. And so you can remember seeing cars in your own life with a lot of paint loss on the hood and on the roof, particularly the areas most exposed by the sun are the most susceptible to being worn out by bad paint. And that's something that you don't want to get into, repainting a car in the modern world. You see the commercials on TV, it sounds like it's going to be a few $100s. It can actually be many, many thousands of dollars on an expensive car like this. So this one, it looks like the left fender, the right fender, maybe the front bumper as well have all been replaced. But overall, it's not a bad car. Now this one actually says on the Carfax that it has structural damage. And so at first blush, you'd be aghast. I would never buy a car with structural damage. But you have to remember, cars don't have frames anymore the way they used to in the old days. the structure, the unibody component of the vehicle is the frame. And so in these unibody cars where the body is the actual frame, it is the actual structure of the car, any damage to the body at all therefore qualifies it for being structural damage. And so the difference between a structural damage car that could be a nightmare and a structural damage car that's no big deal can be great. And so this car with a couple of fenders replaced, not the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination, so long as the price was right. But that same car with structural damage that's genuinely structural damage, with actual interior damage to the engine compartment, i.e. airbag deployment, well, that could be something you definitely don't want to get anywhere near at any price, because if the airbags have been deployed, then how do you know there's even airbags in the car unless you do a much more thorough investigation of the car. And so it's not a perfect science when you're looking at cars that have been in accidents before. However, a little can go a long way. A little information can go a long way. Just knowing how to look at a car and making your own proper assessment. From there, the smartest advice I could ever give you is get a buyer's inspection. If you're buying from a dealership that's an extremely reputable dealership, go right to their Better Business Bureau rating. If they're an A+ Better Business Bureau dealership, then that's just what they're all about. A+ means they have drama just like everybody else does, but they take care of it. They're not in business to kind of screw you over, so to speak, and put you into a bad car. An A+ dealership, they're going to explain things to you in the most intelligent way that they possibly can, and if something unknown comes up, then obviously they're gonna remedy it for you. If you're buying it from somebody that you never heard of before, a broker or something like that, just whoever makes that car, in this case Mercedes, just before you sign one piece of paper, you drive that car right to the Mercedes-Benz dealership, not to your friend, not to an independent shop, not anything like that. Take your buyer's inspection to the place that sells that car new, in this case Mercedes-Benz. Drive it right to the Mercedes-Benz dealership, point out you've got a little bit of information on your side now that you've discovered that these screws have been turned, and as part of your buyer's inspection, you want to know exactly what we're talking about here so that you can make the most intelligent choice possible. If you'd like to come take a look at this particular car, or you'd like to share some ideas, please don't hesitate to call me. Again, my name is Joe Tunney at Infiniti of Kirkland. You can find me at joet@infinitiofkirkland.com. Of course, you could just stop by here in Kirkland, Washington, and come say hi. But if you'd like some more information about this particular car, please feel free to call us, 425-481-0460, or again, drop me a line, joet@infinitiofkirkland.com.